The chatbot will stop giving such clear-cut answers to questions about personal relationships. So that's a new change from OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT.
Yeah. I've just asked, does Emily Carver like Tom Harwood?
And I've
asked the chatbot
what does chat say?
There's no evidence Emily Carver likes Tom Harwood.
GBNews, the People's Channel.
It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 21st of August. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Well, any moment now, Lucy Connelly, the mother who was jailed last year for an apparently racist tweet during the Southport riots, is being released from prison after serving 9 months of her 31-month sentence. We'll have all the latest.
And there's been a Labour hotel revolt because town hall leaders across Britain are poised to fight the government's migrant hotels policy after the High Court ruling at Essex Epping Hotel.
Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch is urging Tory councils to launch legal action to fight hotel housing for asylum seekers. But where will the asylum seekers go?
And it's GCSE results day, a nervous day for parents, pupils, grandparents and teachers all across the UK as students are opening their exam results this morning. Good luck.
Top grades are up, but pass grades are down, although here in Warrington, so far, we've been seeing lots of smiling faces. We'll be speaking to pupils a little bit later.
And very shortly this morning, the Home Office will release the latest immigration figures, and our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is poised to crunch the numbers.
And is it ever OK to smack your child? Because more than 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds think not, as calls to ban the punishment in England and Northern Ireland grow stronger.
Oh, ooby-doo, I want to be like you. I want to walk like you, talk like you.
Yes, from pygmy hippos to rockhopper penguins, it's weigh-in week at Whipsnade Zoo, and we'll be checking in there soon.
Well, Miriam, Lucy Connelly being released today, almost certainly with that 31-month sentence. Inciting racial hatred was that conviction. Very controversial decision to put her behind bars. But this is a free speech channel. The questions have been asked on this channel more than any since she's been in prison. Was that the right decision?
Absolutely.
And today we might finally hear from her on that.
Absolutely. Big day for her and her family, obviously, having been separated from her husband and daughter for so long. But hugely important questions for our whole legal system about why she wasn't given bail, why she was charged with such a harsh sentence. Well, lots to come today. Packed show, latest immigration figures, all about asylum hotels. But we want to know what you think.
Yes, you know how to do that. It's gbnews.com/your say for all your views and comments. We also want to hear about if you're in a Labour area where there's an asylum hotel, because the leader of Wirral Council this morning suggesting that they're going to do what succeeded in Tory-run Epping in challenging potentially the use of asylum hotels in that area because of those planning regulations. You could see the government fighting back against their own local authorities. So that's another interesting topic. We'll be having more on that over the next couple of hours.
But first of all, here's your 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Yes, thank you very much. The headlines at 9:30 this morning. Kemi Badenoch has called for more Conservative councils to launch legal challenges over asylum hotels as the government faces a potential revolt from its own local authorities. Thousands of students across the country are finding out their GCSE grades today. Tens of thousands of them can do so via an app for the very first time. Lucy Connelly, who was jailed for stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers online on the day of the Southport murders, will be released from prison today. Government borrowing in the UK slowed to a lower than expected £1.1 billion in July, according to official figures. And campaigners have issued a fresh call to ban smacking across the UK after a poll found more young adults think it's unacceptable. Those are the latest headlines for now. More news from me at 10 o'clock.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Good morning, welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Now, it's a big start today, obviously, for this news on migrant hotels, because the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, has called for Tory councils to launch legal challenges over asylum hotels. The High Court rules that the migrants removed from the Bell Hotel in Essex, that's got to be done by the 12th of September.
Well, at the same time, the government faces a potential revolt from its own local authorities too. Because, of course, Charlie, many Labour councils will now be eyeing up this victory and thinking that they could appease angry local residents in their areas too by potentially using this same legal technicality to get those hotels shut down.
Yes, the leaders of both Wirral and Tamworth are saying that they're looking at options here. Those are both Labour authorities because, of course, they're going to cite similar concerns that were heard successfully in Epping to challenge that. As you can imagine, there has been a lot of unrest in both of those areas about the presence of hotels, as there has been at dozens of locations across the country. The Labour government say, of course, they've closed a lot of hotels, but still 50,000 arrivals since they came into power. And if they're not in hotels, it doesn't mean they've been deported, right? It doesn't mean they've just been they've been pushed out of the country. It means they've been dispersed into communities, in HMOs or in other properties and potentially also camps around the country.
And we will have the latest figures coming out this morning from the Home Office on asylum seekers. And the last figures to be published, which was in March, showed over 100,000 asylum claims last year. Of course, the small boats is a big part of it, but there are plenty of other reasons for people and ways that people arrive. So a huge legal headache for the government if they are no longer able to use hotels. Will they go down the route of tent cities, as some on the right have suggested? That would be a big U-turn for them.
Sure. I feel like it's highly unlikely, but it's the option that they're being pushed towards at the moment. Well, speaking of other legal headaches, any moment now Lucy Connelly is set to walk free from prison in Peterborough after she was jailed for 31 months for writing a tweet during last year's summer riots, which was convicted for racial hatred. She's served 9 months now of that sentence.
Yes, in July last year, Connelly urged followers on X to set fire to asylum hotels. She was then sentenced to more than 2.5 years in prison, despite deleting the post just hours later and saying that she regretted it.
Wow. The editor of Spiked Online magazine, Tom Slater, joins us now to discuss this. Good morning, Tom. Great to speak with you. Obviously, Spiked has been at the forefront of the fight for free speech for many years now. How important is the Lucy Connelly case in that battle?
I think it's really important, Charlie. I think it's really testing the limits of our speech laws in this country. In the case of Lucy Connelly, you've got someone who posted something which is obviously inflammatory, obviously despicable. But what I think this debate has shown is that even though someone might have posted something inflammatory and despicable, should that person be in prison? Should that person be in prison for 31 months? Should that person be in prison for a longer stretch than even some of the Southport rioters received for actually menacing that mosque in the wake of those horrific attacks? So whilst this is certainly the kind of case which really gets us down to brass tacks, I think it's really demonstrated that the state really shouldn't be involved in policing thought and speech. Incitement to violence is a very different thing. I don't think this qualifies as that for a reason we might go into. But I think this is a reminder that really, should we be going around locking up people because of something ugly they said in a moment of madness? Absolutely not. And I hope this is the beginning of a broader debate about where our speech laws are.
Of course, there's been a lot of focus on the length of the sentence. She appealed that and lost the appeal. But there are also huge question marks about why she wasn't given bail when she was first arrested. She'd never been in trouble with the police before. As we know, she deleted that post very soon after making it. Why was she treated so harshly right at the beginning of this process?
And that's one of the questions, Miriam, that we really need answers to now. If you look at the reporting done by the Daily Telegraph and elsewhere, it's pretty clear that at the very least, the climate around this case, the politics around this case might have warped some of the decision-making. There was a report in the Telegraph suggesting that concerns about media interests might have influenced the decision not to give her temporary release. That should be absolutely irrelevant to these kinds of decisions. Similarly, with the question of bail, was Lucy Connelly really a threat? Was she likely to reoffend? It seems highly unlikely, and yet she was denied that. And of course, bail is really significant towards the pressure that it puts or doesn't put on a particular defendant. If she was allowed to go back to her family, would she have continued to plead guilty? Which is something which obviously sealed her fate, meant that her case never went before a jury, meaning that she might have had a chance to actually walk free after her trial. So all of these questions need to be addressed now. I just fear it's going to take a long time to get those answers out of various different bodies who have been very cagey about how they've dealt with this case.
But Tom, there are problems for the government here because, of course, the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, he approved the charge of stirring up racial hatred against the mother and childminder Lucy Connelly last year. And also there is a further issue for Sir Keir Starmer because he also defended the conviction, saying that he was strongly in favour of free speech but against incitement to violence. But in 2013, when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, he said that a more lenient approach should be taken to those who swiftly deleted social media posts and expressed remorse. Well, in this case, we had a deletion within a matter of hours and a guilty plea. Now, is that going to be a problem for the Labour government, both Hermer's involvement and Starmer's previous language about these sorts of cases?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, it shows that Keir Starmer really has never had a principle. He wasn't willing to shop in when it was politically convenient to do so. I think also the questions about elements of political influence over this particular case are really strong. As you say, the Attorney General has to sign off on these cases. Lord Hermer duly did. There's also the broader political climate, the broader message that was being sent out from government and the state at that time. You had government social media accounts blaring out the words "think before you post." You had the Director of Public Prosecutions in the wake of the riots saying that you could be arrested not simply for posting hateful things, but for retweeting hateful things. The message really went out that people who were not just engaged in bigoted writing, but potentially engaged in bigoted speech, would also be made examples of. And how could that not have influenced the way in which the police, the courts and so on dealt with these cases?
Huge questions about political bias, but also questions about the effectiveness of our law. And I think one of the problems of terms like stirring up or encouraging is that they're highly subjective and they separate somebody's opinions and what they say from whether or not there was actually any violence or harm caused. Do you think we need to look at our law again and whether or not it's specific enough to charge people safely?
No, absolutely. I think we need to junk the idea of inciting hatred, whether that's racial hatred, religious hatred. Inciting violence is something that can be clearly defined. Even in the US, you're not allowed to incite violence. Land of the First Amendment has to be very tightly defined, but nevertheless, that can be clearly delineated. Hatred is a whole different ballgame. First of all, because who is to decide what is hateful and what isn't? I certainly wouldn't trust the police or the CPS to make those kinds of decisions, given some of the crazy cases that we've seen around speech in recent years. And frankly, it's not really any of the state's business who we might hate or dislike or what have you. If you come across a view that you find really odious, you should challenge it, you should challenge them, you should expose them. That's absolutely fine. But I think this business that we've been in this country for many decades now, that we expect the state to play a role in policing views that we deem to be abhorrent, it's shown what an authoritarian mess that gets you in. So incitement to violence, of course, should always be a crime. Incitement to hatred, I think we need to get rid of this concept. It's caused much more trouble. And it's not obvious to me that it's helped in pushing back against any of the genuinely bigoted views in society you might all agree are wrong-headed.
Well, Tom, you mentioned the US there, the land of the First Amendment. Do you think there's a possibility that this case could affect our relationship with Washington? Because we've heard J.D. Vance talk about free speech in Europe. Our own colleague Bev Turner was asking Donald Trump this when he landed in Scotland, if he was concerned about free speech. And Sir Keir Starmer said, we have free speech in this country. There's a risk, isn't there, that if this story becomes well known in the United States, that could cause some diplomatic tension between the two administrations?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, there's many people on the American right who, frankly, think that we've almost become some sort of totalitarian dictatorship, such as the interest in this story. It's not quite that bad, guys, but it is pretty bad. And I think the key area, I suppose, diplomatically is the extent to which our speech laws, particularly the Online Safety Act, if that has any kind of reach across to US users, that seems to be their primary issue. That said, it does speak to a real kind of gap in values emerging between sections of the American right and the British political class, which is going to continue to be a problem because the sorry state of our speech laws has become a real topic of interest kind of in the American culture war, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Well, Tom Slater from Spiked Online, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, this case does throw up so many questions, Charlie, and one of them is how important it is to have good legal representation early on in the process.
Yes, we've seen recently how helpful it is to get that representation and perhaps not to plead guilty straight away when you might have a case spike, especially with the backlog that this country has in the justice system at the moment. Well, stay with us because still ahead we'll reveal just how many asylum seekers have been housed temporarily in hotels at the end of Labour's first year in power.
And coming up next, we're going to hear from some nervous students getting their GCSE results, and females have outperformed males, unlike in A-level results this year. So, Sophie, what's the latest?
Well, there were lots of nerves this morning, but there's now lots of smiling faces here at this high school in Warrington. Coming up, I'll be speaking to one of those fabulous students who's received her results this morning.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hot and sunny conditions continue across much of Spain and Portugal. A few heavy showers likely in Croatia. A fairly brisk wind blowing in Sardinia, quite breezy too in southern parts of Portugal. But most of Spain and Portugal dry, fine and sunny. Just a small chance of a shower in Ibiza. Much greater chance of seeing some heavy showers across Croatia. Fine and sunny for most of the Greek islands and Turkey. That will continue through the weekend as well. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Are you as surprised as many no doubt watching this show that the career of Meghan Markle seems to have risen like a phoenix?
Oh, well, you talk about ashes, but I think we have to accept that it is us, the media, who created those ashes. There was no statement from Harry and Meghan and no indication at any point. But we all decided that the Netflix deal was dead in the water. So it's one in the eye, actually, to all her detractors. Cameron summed the whole thing up very, very well, though I have to say that he kind of spoke about all these projects, but if you analyse it, it's one show that's in the can already. That's her lifestyle show. There's a holiday special about Christmas, and then there's the Ugandan documentary, but Harry is mentioned in that only as one of many producers, quite a long way down, actually, and Meghan is also mentioned there. And the rest of it is all very, very vague what's going to happen, but the fact of the matter is, they have won, Meghan has won, and we have to eat humble pie.
Do you think there's something in now, this hierarchy has been flipped? It was the royal prince who was the box office, he was the trouser wearer, if you like, in this relationship in terms of public profile. Suddenly, it's Meghan Markle, as you say, who could be the angel on top of the tree. Prince Harry languishing down there as something, I don't know, a bit of an inconsequential elf.
Yeah, but I think he has realised that perhaps television isn't his forte. You know, producing television programmes is really not as easy as he might have thought. And he's far better not on the celebrity treadmill or the production treadmill. He's much better using his name for his campaigns. And I think that he is going to be going in that direction with just a little foot in the Netflix camp from time to time.
GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I want to be like you. I want to walk like you. Talk like you.
Well, I'm glad we aren't being weighed live on air, Charlie, but it is a big day for Whipsnade Zoo.
I don't mind. I'd be all right being weighed on air. It'd be quite fun. Maybe that could be a feature we do soon.
I'm sure it's HR would have something to say.
That's going to be a bit of a crisis. Well, in Whipsnade Zoo, however, from pygmy hippos to rock hopper penguins, it's time for them to step on the scales because the big annual weigh-in at the zoo is underway today, and the one and only Jack Carson, our national reporter, is there for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Charlie and Miriam. Here we are awaiting imminently the lions. So they've been weighed on these giant scales inside. And they're going to come around and hopefully give us a bit of a show. Sarah Forsyth, who's been with us all morning, joins us again. Sarah, tell us about the lions that you've got here at Whipsnade.
So we've got a trio. So we've got Dad Malik, and then we've got two females, Wacker and Winter. And last year and early this year, they had a litter of cubs each, the female. So we're now up to 10 lions. So a huge amount, and large pride, which is great because that's how they would naturally be.
And they must be one of the most popular animals you've got here because I guess it's the danger about them. It's their roar. It's everything about them. I think it's quite showbiz almost, isn't it? A lion?
Yeah, I mean they're an iconic species, aren't they? So everybody loves a lion. Everybody knows what a lion is. And I think since we've had the cubs born, and the cubs are so interactive and they're fun and they're charging around and they're really sort of engaging with people as well. So everybody's been thoroughly enjoying coming to see them.
So what with their weighing? What are the things that you're looking for? What are the things that you're making sure are okay? And I guess picking up if it's not okay.
So I guess two things really. So with the females, it was weighing them during their pregnancy, making sure they're gaining weight steadily so we could monitor how the pregnancy was going. That helped us give that information. And then for the cubs, although we haven't quite trained them all to stand on a scale yet, we're working on it, but it's also just make sure their development is correct, that they're growing at a steady rate, they're putting on weight that they should do, they're eating enough, and they're just developing in the right way and they're healthy. So yeah, been quite a lot going on since they've been born.
And these are a vulnerable species, so I guess it's important to get this data that can inform not just this zoo, but other zoos around the country and around the world.
Absolutely, and that's the great thing about zoos is because we are actually able to do things like weigh our animals, it gives us information that we can share with other zoos across the world to actually know what a standard weight for a lion would be, so that it helps us monitor their health.
Oh my goodness, and there we go, look at that, right on cue. They've all come charging out, so they all seem to be following. Is that Mum?
Yeah, that's the two mums leading the way, and that's Dad just following up behind. So they're going to see what's out there first.
Oh wow! They all just kind of seem to charge out. That was quite a rush. So they've been weighed today. I mean, is it looking like that today the whole weighing in general? Is it looking like it's gone well and you're getting what you wanted?
Yeah, I mean, obviously animals are predictable. That's why they say never work with children or animals, and they dictate how the day's going to go generally. But we've got good weights. We know all our animals are healthy. And we're really happy how it's gone.
And we've got some of the cubs to finish. There we go, to finish the live. Thank you very much, Sarah, for joining us again. Sarah will be with us later on. And just to finish, here we go, some beautiful cubs. And I think Dad's coming along to have a look too.
All right, thank you, Jack Carson. Lovely pictures there. And very great. We'll come back to you later in the programme, I'm sure.
Yes. Well, thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are opening their GCSE results this morning. And we can reveal that female students have outperformed males again this year.
Well, joining us now in Warrington is GBNews reporter Sophie Reaper, who's been speaking to students picking up their results this morning. Sophie, how's it been over there?
Oh, we've seen lots of smiling faces here at St Gregory's this morning, and just one of those smiles has come from Macy. Macy, how have you done? Are you happy?
Yeah, I'm really happy with all my results. Did a lot better than I expected.
And do you feel like all the hard work was worth it now?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I know there's one subject in particular that you've done very, very well in. I'll let you tell the story, but this is very, very impressive. Go ahead.
I got a 9 in history. I got the highest in the year group, so it's definitely my best subject.
So just to say there, of every pupil in Year 11 at this high school, Macy here got the best in history. I don't want to underplay that. That is really absolutely incredible. And that's great, isn't it? Because tell us about your future plans.
I want to be a history teacher, so I'm going to Cronton in September to do sociology, philosophy and history, so that'll be quite good.
I bet it will. I mean, you're lucky students in the future who've got a teacher who's got the best results in history. Now, we're nearly run out of time, but just tell me, how relieved are you this morning?
So relieved. It feels so much better now I've got them and I can just go and celebrate.
Well, we'll let you go and do just that. Macy, thank you so much and congratulations once again. Absolutely fabulous. Isn't it amazing to see those smiling faces after all the hard work, after all the nerves and the anxiety, to see those faces this morning smiling away, particularly when they've done so remarkably well. Just brilliant scenes here in Warrington this morning.
Lovely stuff, Sophie Reaper, and congratulations to Macy.
Well, still coming up, all eyes are on Peterborough Prison this morning as Lucy Connelly, who was sentenced to 30 months in jail for a tweet, is set to walk free. Don't miss it. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, it will be another dry day today. A mixture of sun and clouds, there's some grey skies and some blue skies. The wind's generally light, still a bit of a breeze blowing along some of these North Sea coasts, keeping things a little fresh. It is a bit cooler out there this morning compared to recent mornings. For many, though, we are starting off with some sunshine. We will see cloud developing as we go through the day. So, as I say, it's not going to be blue skies all the way. Temperatures, though, when the sun is out, getting into the low 20s across the south coast of England, South Wales, 21, 22, maybe 23 Celsius. It does, again, feel a bit cooler on some of those North Sea coasts, even though it should generally be a bright day with, at times, some sunshine coming through. But we will see some cloud coming out across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia and the southeast. Decent spells of sunshine continuing for much of the day in South Wales and southwest England. Again, that mixture of cloud and sun further north, just a very small chance that the cloud may be thick enough for the odd light shower. The breeze continuing to ease down across the east of Scotland. Still noticeable and cool feel across Shetland with that breeze coming in from the north here. It'll be chilly overnight tonight. The cloud will tend to melt away through this evening, so generally becoming clear and with light winds. Might just turn a bit misty in one or two places, and we will certainly feel the chill first thing tomorrow morning. Compared to recent mornings, temperatures in towns and cities just about staying in double digits, but many rural spots will be below that, down into single figures. So a fresher start to Friday. Again, generally a fine day, maybe some thicker cloud in the Western Isles, producing the odd spot of rain. Again, it's not going to be blue skies all day everywhere. There will be times of fair, but a cloud coming in and blotting out that sunshine. But again, the vast majority will have another dry day, and temperatures a little higher, and they'll pick up a little further as we go through the weekend again, with most of us likely to stay dry.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Temporary traffic lights are operational on the A9 at Tacher due to emergency roadworks, expected to affect traffic until 6 in the morning on December 31st. In Essex, the A12 southbound between Junction 12 and Junction 11 has a lane closed following a road traffic collision. In Kent, look out for a broken down vehicle on the A20 eastbound between the junctions with the A260 and the A256 Dover West, leading to lane restrictions. On the trains, there is major disruption with Avanti West Coast and Caledonian sleeper services in the Wigan northwestern area. Stay up to date for more travel news. Go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year.
That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Thursday the 21st of August. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Now, any moment now, Lucy Connelly, the mother who was jailed last year for inciting racial hatred in a tweet during the Southport riots, she's set to be released from prison after serving 9 months of her 31-month sentence. We'll have all the latest.
And of course, everyone wants to speak to Lucy Connelly, someone whose plight has captured not just national but international attention and sparked claims of two-tier justice.
Breaking news in the last few minutes, new figures show a total of 32,059 asylum seekers were being housed temporarily in UK hotels at the end of Labour's first year in government. That's up 8% on the same point last year.
And there's a Labour hotel revolt because town hall leaders across the country are poised to fight the government's migrant hotels policy after that legal victory in Epping.
Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch is urging Tory councils to launch legal action to fight hotel housing for asylum seekers. But where will they go?
And it's GCSE results day. Pass rates have fallen in a nervous day for pupils in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, opening their exam results this morning. We'll be speaking to some of them later today.
And is it ever okay to smack your child? Well, more than 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds think not, as calls to ban the punishment in England and Northern Ireland grow stronger.
I want to be like you. I want to walk like you. Talk like you.
Well, from pygmy hippos to rock hopper penguins, it's weigh-in week at Whipsnade Zoo in Bedfordshire. Jack Carson is there with his binoculars.
Well, the weigh-in going very successfully so far, although over here at the Lions, that board had some of their measurements on. They're trying to rip it apart, so I'm not sure some people are very happy here this morning. Stay with us here at Whipsnade as that weigh-in continues.
Yeah, I mean, for our radio viewers, we saw some lovely images there of some lions climbing on a log. They are being weighed today. But some really, really big news today, Charlie. Not only Lucy Connelly's release, but those latest asylum figures showing that the small boats crisis and what we do with people who arrive here illegally is just growing and growing.
Yeah, legal challenges flying in left left, right and centre at the moment on those asylum hotels. Lots of people poising to do the same. Labour councils in Wirral and Tamworth possibly adding to the government's headache, and they're going to be dragged into another row almost certainly over this Lucy Connelly release. You heard Mark White there saying that it's given rise to claims of two-tier justice. What will she say when she comes out of prison later today? We'll be across all of that.
Well, we want to know, of course, what you think, so send your views and comments to gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much. The top stories. Well, Lucy Connelly, who was jailed for stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers online on the day of the Southport murders, will be released from prison today. 42-year-old Connelly, the wife of Conservative councillor Raymond Connelly, will be freed from HMP Peterborough after she was handed a 31-month sentence in October. In July last year, she'd posted on X saying mass deportation now set fire to all the hotels. She pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred by publishing and distributing threatening or abusive material written on X, and was jailed in October last year. The former childminder from Northampton was ordered to serve 40% of her sentence in prison before being released on licence. New Home Office data shows a total of 32,059 asylum seekers were being housed temporarily in the UK hotels at the end of Labour's first year in government. That's up 8% on the same point 12 months ago. Meanwhile, Camel has called for more Conservative councils to launch legal challenges over asylum hotels as the government faces a potential revolt from its own local authorities. In a letter to Tory councils, Mrs Badenoch said she was encouraging them to take the same steps as Epping Council if your legal advice supports it, she says. Labour dismissed her letter as desperate and hypocritical nonsense. Epping secured a temporary injunction from the High Court on Tuesday, blocking the use of the Essex Town's Bell Hotel as accommodation for asylum seekers on planning grounds. The decision has prompted councils controlled by Labour, the Conservatives and Reform UK to investigate whether they could pursue a similar course of action. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philps spoke to GB News.
Labour has lost control of our borders. The number of illegal immigrants crossing the Channel has surged under Labour. It's gone up by 47% since the general election. This year so far has been the worst ever, and because of Labour's border crisis, we're seeing people still being accommodated in these hotels. But now councils are fighting back, led by Conservative-run Epping, and we're now calling on other Conservative councils to look at legal challenges as well, and many are doing so, including Broxbourne next door.
Elsewhere, the GCSE pass rate has fallen again, with 67.4% of all grades in England, Wales and Northern Ireland at 4C and above, according to national data. The gender gap for top grades is persisting. Nearly a quarter of girls achieved at least a grade 7, compared to almost a fifth of boys. That's a 5.1 percentage point gap. Tens of thousands of students can also get their results today via an app for the first time. The government's trialling this app ahead of a national rollout. Government borrowing in the UK slowed to a lower than expected £1.1 billion in July, according to official figures. The Office for National Statistics said the figure, which was £2.3 billion less than the same month a year earlier, is the lowest July borrowing figure for 3 years. It came after a rise in self-assessed income tax payments helped increase tax receipts for the month. July borrowing was higher than the £2 billion figure predicted by a consensus of economists. Borrowing for the first 4 months of the financial year stood at £60 billion, £6.7 billion more than during the same period last year. Campaigners have issued a fresh call to ban smacking across the UK after a poll found more young adults think it's unacceptable. All corporal punishment of children, including shaking, slapping and hitting, became illegal in Wales in 2022. Scotland brought in a similar ban in 2020. However, in England and Northern Ireland, it's unlawful to hit your child except where it's reasonable punishment, something that's judged on a case-by-case basis. Health experts have urged Parliament to bring in a smacking ban across the UK, with doctors and psychiatrists saying research shows the detrimental effects of physical punishment. Elsewhere, the Ministry of Defence has admitted there have been 49 separate data breaches in the past 4 years at the unit handling relocation applications from Afghans seeking safety in the UK. 4 out of the 49 breaches were already publicly known, including the leak in 2022 of a spreadsheet containing details of almost 19,000 people fleeing the Taliban. This mammoth data breach, which led to thousands of Afghans being secretly relocated to the UK, was only revealed last month after the High Court lifted a gagging order. The MOD has refused to provide any details of the nature of each breach, but incidents which have previously been made public include officials inadvertently revealing the email addresses or other personal details of applicants to third parties. Israel began the first stages of its planned assault on Gaza City last night, with troops now holding the outskirts. European leaders are warning the move can only lead to disaster, with the Red Cross saying people are already facing a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Israel says civilians will be evacuated before any major offensive. And a British woman believed to be the world's oldest living person has turned 116. Ethel Caterham, who lives in a care home in Surrey and is Britain's oldest ever person, took the world title in May following the death of a nun from Brazil. She was born in 1909, 5 years before the start of the First World War. In a statement, Ethel's family said she's spending her birthday quietly with her family so she can enjoy it at her own pace. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Thanks, Tatiana, and welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with me, Charlie Peters, and Miriam Cates. You've been getting in touch on gbnews.com/your say about the stories we're discussing this morning. Most crucially, the Lucy Connelly release coming up later, and also more discussion about these asylum hotels, because we're hearing that councils in Wirral and Tamworth, Labour-run authorities, could be challenging them, leading to the question that Miriam asked in our headlines, where will they go? And Bill from Suffolk says, it's simple. Secure detention camps. And Miriam, this is a view I'm hearing all the time at these protests around the country that was put forward by Suella Braverman. Everyone thought it was, deeply immoral and dangerous, but increasingly it seems like the only option.
Absolutely. And if you think back, 3 or 4 decades ago, before there was this small boat crisis. Well, actually, the small boat crisis is only about 6 or 7 years old. But can you imagine in a previous generation the idea that people could turn up on a beach in Kent, you've got no idea who they are, where they've come from, they've got no documents. Of course you would deter them until you were exactly sure who they were and where to send them back to.
Yeah.
It's frankly insane, the fact that we don't do that, in my view. Well, Roadrunner says, talking about the new numbers that are out this morning, so the number of illegal immigrants in hotels is up 8%, but Labour has been spinning the data by telling us the number of hotels is down. Of course, that's a very good point. If you use big hotels with a lot of bedrooms, you can say that the number of hotels is down, while actually accommodating an increase in the number of people in them. That's a good point.
Lucy Connelly is set to walk free from prison in Peterborough after she was jailed for 31 months for writing a post that was deemed to be inciting racial hatred during last year's summer riots. She served 9 months of that sentence. Diane says, what's the hold-up with Lucy Connelly? On a Your Say, she says prisoners are usually kicked out at the crack of dawn. Are these people in Peterborough going to drag it out until midnight in order to still be able to say that she was released on the 21st of August?
Well, we will bring you the latest when we know she has been released. But in July last year, Connelly urged followers on X to set fire to asylum hotels. She was sentenced to more than 2.5 years in prison, despite deleting the post just hours afterwards and saying that she regretted it.
She did say, for all I care. And our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now in the studio to discuss this. 9 months in prison for that post, 31 months sentenced, Mark White. This is going to be a moment of almost liberation for Lucy Connelly.
Yeah, I think it might have been more than 9 months as well, because if memory serves me, I'm sure she was remanded in custody until her hearing, and then, of course, granted the sentence as well. That would explain why she's coming out 9 months after being sentenced, because it would seem that actually she is being released early, but I'm not sure she is if you take into consideration the bail application as well. And remember, of course, now, because of overcrowding in prisons, most prisoners are released now 40% of the way through a sentence. It used to be you'd serve half-year sentence and then you would be released. Now it's 40%, so that could chime. But listen, everybody wants to hear from this woman. It's tragic, this whole case, you know, in the sense that she says she deeply regretted what she did. There's no doubt that it was, at best, an ill-judged tweet. She had admitted to it. She'd come clean. There's, I think, an argument to be had about whether she should really have done that at a time when the courts were determined to set an example to try to stop the rioting that had engulfed many communities around the country. So judges were, without a doubt, imposing the maximum they could in terms of the guidelines that they had in front of them. Because if you compare that to Labour councillor Ricky Jones, who just in recent days was found not guilty by a jury of his peers when he turned up at a protest and gesticulated throat slashing to his throat, suggested that far-right protesters should have their throats slit. He said completely out of character, moment of madness, etc., etc. Because he argued that before a jury, they accepted that and found him not guilty. So I think there's a real argument here about whether Lucy Connelly was badly advised in the first place when she decided to plead guilty.
And Ricky Jones, of course, was granted bail and had a year to prepare his defence, which Lucy Connelly did not have that luxury.
No, absolutely.
But during the trial itself, what was remarkable was the judge commented on some of the other social media posts that she'd made against immigration, remarking that they were racist and obviously using this information to issue a harsher sentence. But there'll be people who have made many legitimate comments about immigration policy on their own social media, now worried that that could be used potentially against them.
I'd say also a lot of her comments about immigration policy, the jury might have heard they were racist, but I think a lot of ordinary people would have seen that and thought...
And the point is she didn't have a jury.
No, it isn't. Right.
But, I mean, it is part and parcel of any judge when they're sentencing, take background information into consideration as well. So, yeah, you can argue rightly or wrongly that should or shouldn't happen. But you're right. I mean, we do have freedom of speech in this country. Many would argue what people say, as unpalatable as it might be for some people, it is exercising freedom of speech. But, of course, you cross the line if it becomes incitement to racial hatred or incitement of violence. But it's raised such concern that even the US State Department is commenting on it in the sense that they're saying they're monitoring the situation. That's diplomatic language for... Guys, what's going on? We are really concerned about this.
I think it's going to open a can of worms, potentially, for our relationship with Washington, because they'll realise that Lucy Connelly isn't an outlier. There are many other cases where the state will imprison people for their views, right, for hatred. Regardless of your take on what she said, if you think it is racial hatred or not, that the state can do that, I think, has alerted a lot of people in Washington about that and could create more of a tension between the two governments.
I think you're right. There is an ongoing issue and concern in Washington about this. The immediate issue of Lucy Connelly, at least the temperature will be lowered a bit now because she's out. And let's see how she feels and how she can sort of pick up her life after that prison term, having never been guilty of any offences in the past. And just try and, get on with life as normal as she can, given that she is a cause celeb now,
Now, Mark, it is the issue of mass migration, which, of course, has had no democratic consent over the last 2 decades, that brought about these riots and, indeed, the controversy about these tweets. And we have got the latest figures on immigration today. The number of small boat arrivals are up. We know that. Anything else of interest in the figures?
Oh, it's my favourite time of the year, each quarter, when I have to wade through these impenetrable figures. If we talk about the asylum bill in general, actually, according to the figures, the asylum bill has gone down. It's at £4.76 billion a year. That's a huge figure, by the way. But it's gone down from a high of £5.38 billion in the year 23 to 24. So it's gone down a bit. And, of course, that asylum bill, it includes accommodation, money given to migrants, the wraparound services. What it doesn't include, of course, are the efforts in the Channel to police the Channel and deal with these people when they come across and they go to Dover and Manston, etc. So that will be a hefty bill in itself as well. And although I said it's down in comparison to last year, it's 3 times the figure that it was a few years back, and 10 times the figure it was a decade ago before we had the small boats crisis. In terms of asylum hotels, we're very alive to that issue at the moment. 32,059 asylum seekers are being housed in hotels at the moment, up 8% on the same point 12 months ago. And the Conservatives are pointing out, and they're quite right to do this, that actually in the last months of the Conservative government, they lowered the number of asylum seekers in hotels by 47%. And had they continued on that trajectory, there would be no asylum seekers in hotels at this point. Clearly, the Labour government, even though they've said, oh, we're going to end the use of asylum hotels by the end of this Parliament, they've not really done anything in any meaningful way to reduce the numbers significantly.
Mark, it's not just the hotels that people are concerned about. There's also dispersal accommodation. Even if you close down a hotel, these people have still got to go somewhere, right? So there are now 15 local authorities with more than 1,000 asylum seekers in dispersed accommodation. So even if the hotels are being shut down, and we're going to see those legal challenges possibly from Tamworth and Wirral, those Labour areas, they'll still need to go somewhere. And on the morning round today, government ministers, when asked where will they go, just seem to be repeating the question, just saying, oh, that's we don't know.
For me, this is the big emerging crisis. The asylum-seeking hotels absolutely are very controversial. No one wants them. But the very thought of, a dozen young men in a house of multiple occupancy in your street or your neighbouring street is going to really, really alarm people.
It's more precarious than a hotel place.
Of course it is, because they're right into the heart of a community. They're free to come and go. I mean, in a hotel, you could argue they're in the one area. There's security around the hotel itself. The police know about the hotel for extra patrols and all that kind of thing. The locals know, that that's a migrant hotel. If I'm concerned, I'm going to stay away from that area. If they're coming to your very street or neighbourhood, then obviously it's going to be of concern. But this government is actually, I think, wedded now to this dispersal model. And I think it could really get them into deep trouble around the country in the months ahead, because it's already an issue, but it's going to become a much, much greater issue.
Huge issue in Nuneaton, for example. Lots of concern in those local areas. I just think they're not able to say that. They're not able to admit that their strategy is HMOs, dispersal accommodation, because it's so much more politically sensitive than hotels even.
Yeah, and there are growing calls from the Conservatives and others about the use of either former military bases or other sites that can be adapted to house large numbers of migrants in, more austere conditions, prefab buildings, something like that, that would also act as a deterrent. To me, anyway, from the years that I've sort of covered this crisis, that seems like a sensible option, but you're always going to come up against the challenges from the human rights lobby, from the lawyers within the Home Office and other government departments that will argue that you can't possibly go down this route because it's going to infringe on their human rights to put them into these kind of conditions. While, of course, across the Channel, many other European countries are doing just that.
Indeed.
And all the while, more and more people are coming across the Channel, exacerbating the problem that we've got.
Except not this week.
Yes.
Well, as you said
the
yesterday,
government must be delighted.
Yes.
But a word of warning for them. Over the weekend, it starts to improve, and then come Monday and Tuesday, sadly, we're going to see bumper numbers.
He'll be praying that Mother Nature steps in, Sir Keir Starmer. All right, well, Home Security Editor Mark White, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
I have to say, Charlie, although obviously the hotels are terrible and a huge waste of money and everybody who comes here illegally should be detained and deported, as a woman and a mother of a teenage daughter, I would prefer to know that people are in a hotel in a central location than could be anywhere on any street in an HMO. You know, we tell our children, our girls, to be wary of strange men who they don't know. Well, it's a terrible problem when you don't even know where they are.
I think the time for hotels and HMOs is over, and I think tented accommodation is going to become the next big call. Well, let's go to a different sort of location now.
Animals behind bars.
People, speaking of that, let's go to Whipsnade Zoo, where our national reporter Jack Carson has been watching animals being weighed.
Yeah, thank you very much to both of you. We are at the final stop now, which is this beautiful camel that you can see. Come and have a look at the camel as it's being weighed on the scales there. And we're going to be speaking to Sarah Forsyth, who's been joining us all morning. She's the curator of mammals here at the zoo. Sarah, what's the results? What's the weigh-in? And introduce us to the camel.
So this is Oakley. He's our breeding male here at Whipsnade Zoo. We've got 2 young camels at the moment, so he's doing his job really, really well.
And what's it? Do we know what he's weighed in at this morning?
776, I've been told. So yeah, he's a good weight, and actually he looks in really good condition. So we're happy with that weight.
Just kind of talk to us about why it's important that obviously you do this regularly, and I guess that's just kind of spot the patterns. Why is it so important that this weigh-in happens? You know, because you've got 11,000 animals here, so it must take quite a bit of time.
It does take time, but we know it's a really, really essential part of their care. If we know how much they weigh, we know what's right for that individual, so we don't just base it on what the species average is. And we see if an individual loses weight or gains weight, we might need to change their diet. We may need to think about paddock access, so they're eating too much grass, or it might be that we actually need to medicate one of them because they're unwell and they need some antibiotics. And if we know how much they weigh, we know exactly how much medication to give them. So it also helps us monitor pregnancies. Is the pregnancy going in the right way? So there's a huge amount of things that we can do well to ensure that they're absolute best care if we know how much they weigh.
And tell us about this camel and this type of camel. What are they like? What do they eat? What do you feed them?
So these are actually they're a Bactrian camel, but they are a domestic species. So this is why we're able to put a head collar in them, working with them. Their wild counterparts are very, very endangered and threatened. So these guys in zoos can actually help us spread the message about the plight of the wild camel, because there are no wild camels in zoos anywhere. These guys are primary grazers, so we give them hay, they have some vegetables, and then they have access to natural grazing as well, so quite a variety of foods.
Okay, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Beautiful Oakley here being weighed. That finishes us up at Whipsnade. Of course, the weighing is going to continue on throughout the day, and as you heard from Sarah, it's not just today, it happens all the time, of course, to make sure that they can give these animals the best care.
Well, thank you very much, Jack, and good news for all the animals who've been weighed. Well, still coming up, find out why Tesco, Sainsbury's and John Lewis and Boots are furious with the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. This is Britain's Newsroom, live on GB News.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I find this a very sad story, that we are considerably less electrified than comparable economies. Is it a sad story?
It covers the trials, tribulations, but also the triumphs of electrification in this country, because we have done some things very well. HS1, for example, I worked on that, the Channel Tunnel rail link, and Don Heath, my co-author, was the project director of the East Coast Main Line, the longest work site in the UK, and indeed I think in Europe in the 1980s. And he brought that job in on time and on budget, as indeed HS1 did. In fact, he got to Leeds a year early and saved £1 million. So we have done some things well.
So first, as it were, the decision-making side of it, and then we'll talk about implementation. So why is it that Britain has not decided to do more electrification in what I would call a timely way?
I think it's primarily because we have no strategy. We had no strategy for electrification, and that goes back right to the 1800s.
Was it the case that British Railways was sort of romantically connected to steam, wouldn't give up steam, and then, rather oddly, became rather infatuated with diesel as well?
Yeah, that's a point, or a number of points that we bring out in the book, actually, because there were different factions in the 1950s. Some people wanted to stick with steam and go straight to electrification. Robert Riddles, for example, he was the chief engineer. But other people thought that the infrastructure requirements were too big, and wouldn't it be better to go for diesel-electric traction and have some benefit from the electric?
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hello, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with me, Charlie Peters, and Miriam Cates. And here to go through all the top stories, you've got the broadcaster and journalist Carol Malone and the political commentator Jonathan Liss. And let's start, obviously, with the migrant hotels revolt, Carol, because two Labour councils now look like they'll join in these potential legal
I thought it was
efforts.
more than that. I thought it was
Wirral
3 or
and
4.
Tamworth are being listed. What others have you seen?
Broxbourne.
I think that's Tory.
Oh yeah, of course. I think it's going to be more than that. I think that this is going to be a revolt, and it's absolutely what the Labour Party deserves, the government deserves. You know, they thought they could ignore the law, and this, and what was proved in the Epping thing, this was an absolutely fair and clean application of the law in having these migrants removed from the hotel. So I think it's gonna happen. And you know, we've got 32,000 asylum seekers in 210 hotels. Where are they all going to go? And the fear is that the local authorities, whose job it is to look after homeless people, are going to be lumbered with them anyway. So because the law says then they have to house homeless people. So there's going to be people put in multiple occupancy houses. It's going to be actually worse than it is now. What are they actually going to do?
I think that's the whole point, because whether or not do you support the asylum system, or whether you think they should be housed in hotels, if it's ruled, and I'm sure the government will take this to the Supreme Court to test the legality of hotels, if it's ruled that hotels that don't have the necessary planning permission can't house asylum seekers, then they're going to have to be housed somewhere else. They are here. The government doesn't have deportation agreements, again, regardless of what you think about deportations, that cannot happen as things stand. And so it's a case of be careful what you wish for, because if they get moved out of these hotels, which have adequate security in some ways, then what happens to them? Where do they go?
What we wish for is to have people who come here illegally deported immediately.
But Jonathan's point is
that
that isn't going to happen tomorrow.
Yes,
we know that. This is a problem that is here to stay for at least some time.
Well, it's very interesting that Starmer, not so very long ago, said publicly that we had lots of spare accommodation, lots and lots of spare accommodation. And also the bumbling Home Office Minister called Dan Jarvis was on a TV show yesterday, was saying there is lots of other appropriate accommodation available. But when pressed, he was unable to say exactly what that accommodation was.
Look, the problem is that
so there isn't any.
There should have been adequate funding for local government so that asylum seekers could be housed in the community. Because what we actually have, this has been a neoliberal solution since the coalition government. That basically,
I've got some breaking. Jonathan, it's breaking news. I've got to interrupt now because Lucy Connelly, who was jailed for stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers online on the day of the Southport murders, according to the Crown Prosecution Service, she has been released from prison. Now, Connelly, the wife of a Conservative councillor, Raymond Connelly, was driven from HMP Peterborough in a taxi earlier this morning, and a prison source confirmed that.
Well, of course, Lucy Connelly was handed a 31-month sentence in October after she posted on X, "Mass deportation now, set fire to all the hotels full of these people. For all I care, if that makes me racist, so be it."
She pleaded guilty at the time to inciting racial hatred, a charge that was brought forward after it was approved by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, after publishing and distributing what the CPS described as threatening or abusive written material on X, and she was jailed at Birmingham Crown Court in October last year.
Well, let's bring the panel in here. Obviously,
exactly.
with news we were expecting, Jonathan. This does call into question all sorts of controversies about our law, but also potential bias in the way that she was treated.
OK, so there are lots of things to unpack there. I don't think that she was treated with bias because under the sentencing guidelines, the offence that she was convicted for, and she pled guilty, so she didn't have a jury trial.
She was advised to plead guilty.
Right, well, again, just going by the law, she pleaded guilty and she was given a sentence that was appropriate for that crime. I do not think that justice was served by putting her in prison.
Yeah.
I do not think that she should have been jailed. I think that in similar circumstances where someone tweets something completely vile, which I absolutely loathe and reject in every way, they should be certainly kicked off all social media platforms, as a matter of course, given police cautions. And if they have deleted the tweet swiftly, I think that should be taken into consideration.
Because that's
I think there should be a very, very high bar for conviction.
But isn't the point of the story is that the Lucy Connelly's jailing, it's about the two-tier justice that operates in this country. You know, I don't think she'd be free today if Ricky Jones, the councillor, hadn't walked free from court last week.
He was acquitted by a jury.
Can I just finish my point without you interrupting? Ricky Jones was acquitted by a jury. Unbelievably, no one in the country can believe that a man who was publicly calling for the slitting of people's throats walked
Well,
free.
we have trial by jury in this. Sorry, Carol.
Do we think juries are always right?
Well,
No,
well,
we
if
don't.
you're advocating getting rid of the jury system...
Can I finish my point? And I think the reason she has been released as early as she has been is because of the Jarvis acquittal last week.
No, it's because of the law. Jones. It's because it's 40% of the sentence.
Yeah.
She spent several months on remand, and she spent 3 months.
A lot of people on this channel hated, by the way.
She was arrested on the 6th of August and not given bail.
All four of us are talking. Let's just go back here a second, because the main controversy, I think, about what's going on now is there's going to be questions for the PM. Carol, you spoke about this sort of two-tier justice thing, but also because he himself, just over a decade ago, said that there should be leniency for people who swiftly delete controversial social media posts.
Was the person who put her in jail? No. So
I'm sorry, but Lord Harmer, the Lord Chancellor, was
a member of his cabinet who approved
her sentence.
Well, you have a separation in powers between the judiciary and the executive. So it's not the Attorney General did not determine her sentence. That's not how it worked.
Isn't it?
No, of course. Well, it's not. The Attorney General doesn't personally supervise.
The Attorney General has come under huge criticism for a lot of the sentence.
Let's go back to what Jonathan said about there needs to be a high bar for convictions for speech. And the problem at the moment is that our law is a bit of a dog's dinner and was designed in a pre-social media age where incitement to violence was basically standing up in front of a mob and saying, go and burn down that building. Right. Now, probably most people think that should be illegal. But incitement to hatred or speech that is not really encouraging any particular person to do any particular thing, should that be a criminal matter?
It's also about publication, isn't it? Because we have, under our sort of old laws, a publication is something that you put out in a tweet, which in a previous age might have been something that you would say loudly in a pub, which wouldn't have been prosecuted in the same way. And I also think there's a different... If you are directly inciting violence, I think that should be a crime. If you are saying that something can happen for all you care, I think that's different.
Carol, the point is that a jury didn't think that Ricky Jones was. And I think a British jury, an English jury, would come to the same conclusion about Lucy Connelly, particularly because she said, for all I care. It was a throwaway, angry comment.
She did plead guilty, Charlie.
I know. She shouldn't have pleaded guilty.
You have heard the stories about how she was coerced into pleading guilty. Right. She was told they were all told the people who pleaded guilty that the courts would go easy on them.
Sure.
They had no idea this was going to happen. But I'm very much hoping when Lucy Connelly comes out, she shames Starmer and she shames... I hope she goes on every talk show, does dozens of interviews and shames Starmer and this government for what's happened.
I think there's no doubt that there was political pressure at the time on this. The state itself, social media accounts from organs of the state were describing people as criminals before there'd even been any charges. Yes. The Home Office had 1,000 criminals arrested after the first weekend.
In the context of the rights themselves, obviously there was an incredible pressure on the government, which had just been elected, and they're not responsible for juries and trials, etc. etc. But of course, the government can say this is a priority, and that's why you did have so many fast-tracked trials. But again, she's not a hero of free speech. She said something absolutely vile.
Everyone has condemned what she said. Everyone, but she said it in the heat of the moment, and the people who don't know why she said it, it's been explained. Her own child died in very tragic circumstances, her 19-month-old baby, and she was incensed and angry and upset when the little girls from Stockport were murdered. That's why she... sorry, yes. What did I say?
Stockport.
OK. Were murdered. So... That's why she said what she said, but she realised immediately, and everyone says things they don't mean, and they should be given the chance to delete it. And Starmer has actually said that should be the case. But she got banged. She got banged up to make a political point because Starmer was raging about the far right.
Carol, it's just
and they
not
wanted
true.
to paint her. It is
But
true.
if you plead guilty to that offence, that is the punishment you receive. Now, you could argue about how the punishment works,
this is
but
a
that
woman who has no
how,
experience
according
of
to
the law.
Carol, Jonathan, we're going to have to leave it there. We'll see you again in an hour. But coming up next, we will reveal the scale of Britain's national debt. According to the Taxpayers Alliance, you won't believe it.
And we'll get more reaction to Lucy Connelly being freed from prison. Breaking news in the last few moments. This is Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, it will be another dry day today. A mixture of sun and clouds, so some grey skies and some blue skies. The wind's generally light, still a bit of a breeze blowing along some of these North Sea coasts, keeping things a little fresh. It is a bit cooler out there this morning compared to recent mornings. For many, though, we are starting off with some sunshine. We will see cloud developing as we go through the day. So, as I say, it's not going to be blue skies all the way. Temperatures, though, when the sun is out, getting into the low 20s across the south coast of England, South Wales, 21, 22, maybe 23 Celsius. It does, again, feel a bit cooler on some of those North Sea coasts, even though it should generally be a bright day with, at times, some sunshine coming through. But we will see some cloud coming out across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia and the south east. Decent spells of sunshine continuing for much of the day in South Wales and South West England. Again, that mixture of cloud and sun further north, just a very small chance that the cloud may be thick enough for the odd light shower. The breeze continuing to ease down across the east of Scotland. Still noticeable and cool feel across Shetland with that breeze coming in from the north here. It'll be chilly overnight tonight. The cloud will tend to melt away through this evening, so generally becoming clear, and with light winds, might just turn a bit misty in one or two places. And we will certainly feel the chill first thing tomorrow morning. Compared to recent mornings, temperatures in towns and cities just about staying in double digits, but many rural spots will be below that, down into single figures. So a fresher start to Friday. Again, generally a fine day, maybe some thicker cloud in the Western Isles, producing the odd spot of rain. Again, it's not going to be blue skies all day everywhere. There will be times a fair bit of cloud coming in and blotting out that sunshine. But again, the vast majority will have another dry day. And temperatures a little higher, and they'll pick up a little further as we go through the weekend again, with most of us likely to stay dry.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M4 eastbound near junction 42 at Earlswood, roadworks have closed the on-slip with diversions in place. Traffic moves slower than usual on the A46 southbound in Nottinghamshire between the A1434 and the A1133, causing around 20 minutes of delay. Meanwhile, on the M6 southbound in Cheshire East, a broken down vehicle between junction 17 and junction 16 has closed one of 4 lanes. And on the trains, major disruptions are affecting services, particularly with Avanti West Coast and Caledonian Sleeper in the Wigan northwestern area. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. It's 22:11. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Now, new analysis from the Taxpayers Alliance has revealed that Britain's national debt has ballooned by almost £200 billion in 1 year alone. And we're seeing their live debt clock on the screen. It's like that reform membership tracker, isn't it? Keeps going up.
I think they'd love 2.7 trillion members, but it probably aren't unrealistic. Well, we're joined now by the head of the Taxpayers Alliance, Elliot Peck. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. These are incredible figures, 200 billion more in just a year. What's leading to this debt crisis?
So the exact figure, £187 billion, that's 7% of our national debt in just 1 year alone. And I would struggle to think that there'd be a single viewer watching today that could name something that we've seen improved over the last year as a result of that £187 billion. Do we see a better health service? Do we see a better education service? Is the justice system ticking along nicely? None of this is working. That £187 billion has essentially gone into, as far as we can tell, very little, and it only seems to be getting worse.
You can see on your live tracker behind you, Elliot, the number of Big Macs you can buy for the national debt. It says £96,000 per household.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the hope of this being dealt with properly?
Yeah, and it's £6,500 per household just in the last year, and that's going to be paid by future generations, going to be paid by us to some extent, and it's very, very clear in the upcoming budget and over the next few years that the Labour government is going to continue to spend more. And of course, that money's not being spent on good, productive things. That's just being handed out in massive, unconditional pay rises, essentially, to their union mates. That means you're not going to get the productivity boost that you need in places like the health service and all the rest of it. And it does mean that the country is heading for bankruptcy, and it's not going to be too far away. The national debt that we've added in the last year would be the third largest department by spending, and that's just going to be catastrophic for the years to come.
Now, I've heard some economists say that national debt is not important. We issue our own currency. We don't ever actually have to pay this money back. What would you say to that?
Well, some of our debt is denominated in our own currency. Some of it's not. And of course, even though you are able to print money to pay for your own debt that you've denominated in your own currency, that's still inflationary. We've already seen inflation tick up to 3.8%. Debt interest alone is now at about £110 billion a year. That's £110 billion we're not spending on anything else, that we're not using for tax cuts. So it may have been that 10, 15 years ago, when we thought we were in a period of permanent low interest rates, debt was something to worry about a little less. Now that interest rates are up and interest rates are here to stay, we need to get serious about it very, very quickly.
Now, it's easy to blame politicians. They're the ones in control of the spending. It's easy to blame the Bank of England and economic advisors. But isn't also the problem that the public want more spending on the NHS, on schools, on defence, and lower taxes, and politicians who are democratically elected want to give people what they want?
I'm very sceptical of that point of view. The public are entitled to have contradictory positions, and it's up to politicians and it's up to the government to be leaders and actually sketch out a clear, coherent ideology and fiscal position behind that. And this government came in saying that they really cared about the finances. They spoke about the £22 billion black hole. They claim to be very serious about this stuff, and yet since then all they've done is spend like there's no tomorrow. So it's up for politicians to lay a clear position and a clear ideology and actually lead the public rather than just follow them.
Rachel Reeves now has approval ratings in the single figures.
Yeah.
She's being surrounded by a set of backbench MPs who are certainly to the left of her.
Yeah, well to the left. Yeah.
If she is removed from that position, that figure behind you is going to go even higher, isn't it?
Yes, although, I mean, it's difficult to believe that it could be... People talk about how Rachel Reeves has been a great, restraint on fiscal irresponsibility, and yet, as far as I can tell, there hasn't been a single thing that she's been able to actually cut. So, I'm not actually convinced that things can get much worse as they are. I think ultimately you do need a chancellor that's going to stand up to those backbenchers and really make the case for them that, we risk bankrupting the country if we continue the way we are.
Well, Elliot Peck, very worrying news, and certainly I think we should be paying much more attention to that and potentially coming up to an economic crisis, I think, that people are not ready for. Anyway, thank you so much, Elliot Peck from the Taxpayer Alliance.
Well, up next, find out why Gen Zers are turning their noses up at smacking misbehaving children. Is that ever justified?
But first of all, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of our top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hot and sunny conditions continue across much of Spain and Portugal. A few heavy showers likely in Croatia. A fairly brisk wind blowing in Sardinia, quite breezy too in southern parts of Portugal. But most of Spain and Portugal dry, fine and sunny. Just a small chance of a shower in Ibiza. Much greater chance of seeing some heavy showers across Croatia. Fine and sunny for most of the Greek islands and Turkey. That will continue through the weekend as well. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back, it's 10:49 and this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, and more than 8 in 10 18 to 24-year-olds now believe it's unacceptable to smack or use other forms of physical punishment against children, which is up sharply from 64% last year.
Well, Scotland and Wales have already outlawed all forms of corporal punishment, but in England and Northern Ireland it's still legal if it's judged to be reasonable. Should this remain the case? Well, let's get the views of Baroness Finlay. Good morning, Baroness Finlay. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you think that parents should be banned from smacking their children?
What we're talking about is giving children equal protection from assault that adults have. There is no reason to think that you can hit children more readily than you can hit other people. And there is no evidence that actually so-called smacking, which often is much more than a smack, improves children's behaviour. There's lots of evidence that children need clear boundaries. They need to understand why those boundaries are there. And when they know where they are, they don't go over and over and over, because the problem with this smacking, so-called smacking, is it often is much more than a smack. It's a really hard hit. It injures the child emotionally and physically, but also it gives them the message that whatever we say you can or can't do, well, it's all flexible until the point where we lose it. And then we've all heard about children who have actually been killed by the parent who lost it. They could not control.
Well, Baroness Finlay, there is obviously, it's already against the law to assault children and to commit violence against them. It's already a criminal offence to hit a child, aim a smack at a child's head or shake them, obviously. But the reasonable chastisement defence, which is, I think, what you're hoping is repealed, would allow very mild discipline against a child. And is there not a risk that we're inviting the state to police parenting in a way which has been normal and regular for thousands of years?
No, not at all. In fact, the so-called reasonable chastisement defence has been used, and I'd have to say abused, in defence of completely inappropriately hitting children. Children with skin of colour, particularly very dark children, black kids, or children who are, because of their cultural background, completely covered up from wrist to ankle, you don't see the bruises. This business of the reasonable chastisement has depended on the bruises, the mark being left. Well, if you don't see them because the child has skin of colour or because the injury is actually a severe internal injury, then it's been used as an abuse of the system. This isn't about families, and it does not impinge. In Wales, there has been no evidence, nor in Scotland, of more families being prosecuted or investigated. This is about helping parents manage being a parent.
Let's go back to what you said at the beginning. This is about giving children the same rights as adults. Now, I would fundamentally disagree with the principle of that. I don't think children should have rights. I think they deserve to be protected, and you can't have both. And one of the problems with this is that we've got into this habit of parenting that actually you can ask a child to reflect on their behaviour, put them on the naughty step. Now, that's appropriate, of course, for a 9-10-year-old, but not for an 18-month-year-old who might need a smack on the bottom to keep them out of danger, to give them a short, sharp reminder that they mustn't touch the fire, that they mustn't take a toy from another toddler. You can't reason with a toddler. What's wrong with just a short, sharp smack in that circumstance?
If you're wanting to take the child out of danger, what do? You grab hold of them and you pull them away, and they can tell straight away from your voice alone that they must not do that. Similarly, if they're taking toys of other children, you take it away, you hold on to them, you look them in the eye, and you say, you must not do that. Children need clear messages, and eye contact is the most powerful way to give a message to a child.
OK,
I'm not talking about
Baroness
rights,
Finlay, we've got to go. I'm really sorry, running out of time. Thank you very much for coming on this morning. But up next, we'll get more reaction to the breaking news that Lucy Connelly has been released from prison after serving 9 months in jail. This is Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News. Stay with us for all the latest on that breaking story.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, it will be another dry day today. A mixture of sun and clouds, there's some grey skies and some blue skies. The wind's generally light, still a bit of a breeze blowing along some of these North Sea coasts, keeping things a little fresh. It is a bit cooler out there this morning compared to recent mornings. For many, though, we are starting off with some sunshine. We will see cloud developing as we go through the day. So, as I say, it's not going to be blue skies all the way. Temperatures, though, when the sun is out, getting into the low 20s across the south coast of England, South Wales, 21, 22, maybe 23 Celsius. It does, again, feel a bit cooler on some of those North Sea coasts, even though it should generally be a bright day with, at times, some sunshine coming through. But we will see some cloud coming out across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia and the south east. Decent spells of sunshine continuing for much of the day in South Wales and South West England. Again, that mixture of cloud and sun further north, just a very small chance that the cloud may be thick enough for the odd light shower. The breeze continuing to ease down across the east of Scotland. Still noticeable and cool feel across Shetland with that breeze coming in from the north here. It'll be chilly overnight tonight. The cloud will tend to melt away through this evening, so generally becoming clear, and with light winds, might just turn a bit misty in one or two places, and we will certainly feel the chill first thing tomorrow morning. Compared to recent mornings, temperatures in towns and cities just about staying in double digits, but many rural spots will be below that, down into single figures. So a fresher start to Friday. Again, generally a fine day, maybe some thicker cloud in the Western Isles, producing the odd spot of rain. Again, it's not going to be blue skies all day everywhere. There will be times of fair bit of cloud coming in and blotting out that sunshine. But again, the vast majority will have another dry day, and temperatures a little higher, and they'll pick up a little further as we go through the weekend again, with most of us likely to stay dry.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness.
You've won £54,321.
Please don't joke. This would change my life.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GB News.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 21st of August. Live across the United Kingdom, this is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Well, breaking news. In the last 20 minutes, Lucy Connelly, the mother who was jailed last year for an apparently racist tweet during the Southport riots, has been released from prison. We'll have all the latest.
Well, there will be many who will celebrate that release, believing it heralds the start of a free speech fight back.
And in breaking news, new data shows that there was a record number of asylum claims in Britain in the past year.
We're here at the Last Post pub in Stockton, speaking to people about what immigration is in their area and what it means to the locals.
And there's a growing Labour revolt over asylum hotels. Town hall leaders across Britain are poised to fight the government's migrant hotels policy.
And it's not just Labour, because Camel Badenoch is urging Tory councils to launch their own legal action to fight hotels housing asylum seekers. But the big question that many are asking this morning is, where will they all go?
And it's GCSE results day. Pass rates have fallen in a nervous day for pupils in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, opening their exam results this morning.
And is it ever OK to smack your child? More than 80% of 18 to 24-year-olds think not, as calls to ban the punishment in England and Northern Ireland are growing stronger. So, Miriam, Lucy Connelly freed. You heard Mark there speaking about that free speech fight back. Our audience already getting very engaged with this story. We had a bit of a row, didn't we, in the last hour with Carol Malone and Jonathan Liz, comparing it to the Ricky Jones case found not guilty by a jury last week. But of course, in the case of Lucy Connelly, she pleaded guilty. A lot of people saying that the state put on a lot of pressure around August last year, that people felt as though they had to plead guilty to get a lesser punishment. It's going to start a real serious conversation about free speech and speech laws in Britain.
Exactly. It should absolutely start a debate about the law, because we have a mess at the moment. And I think an earlier guest, Tom Slater, made the good point that, of course, it should be wrong to incite violence. But inciting hatred, what is hatred? Should that be illegal? Who gets to judge what is hatred? Well, we'd love to know what you think, so send your views and comments to gbnews.com/yoursay.
But before we get into all of that, let's get a news update. The one and only Tatiana Sanchez.
Charlie, thank you very much. The top stories. Lucy Connelly, who was jailed for stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers online on the day of the Southport murders, has been released from prison. A prison source says she was driven from HMP Peterborough in a taxi this morning. 42-year-old Connelly, the wife of Conservative councillor Raymond Connelly, was freed just a short while ago. She was handed that sentence in October. In July last year, she'd posted on X saying mass deportation now, set fire to all the hotels. She pleaded guilty to inciting racial hatred by publishing and distributing threatening or abusive written material on X. Was jailed last year. The former childminder from Northampton was ordered to serve 40% of her sentence in prison before being released on licence. New Home Office data shows a total of 32,059 asylum seekers were being housed temporarily in UK hotels at the end of Labour's first year in government, up 8% on the same point 12 months ago. Meanwhile, Camel Badenoch has called for more Conservative councils to launch legal challenges over asylum hotels as the government faces a potential revolt from its own local authorities. In a letter to Tory councils, Mrs Badenoch said she was encouraging them to take the same steps as Epping Council if your legal advice supports it. Labour dismissed her letter as desperate and hypocritical nonsense. Epping secured a temporary injunction from the High Court on Tuesday, blocking the use of the Essex town's Bell Hotel as accommodation for asylum seekers on planning grounds. The decision has prompted councils controlled by Labour, the Conservatives and Reform UK to investigate whether they could pursue a similar course of action. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp spoke to GB News.
Labour has lost control of our borders. The number of illegal immigrants crossing the Channel has surged under Labour. It's gone up by 47% since the general election. This year so far has been the worst ever. And because of Labour's border crisis, we're seeing people still being accommodated in these hotels. But now councils are fighting back, led by Conservative-run Epping. And we're now calling on other Conservative councils to look at legal challenges as well. And many are doing so, including Broxbourne next door.
And just some breaking news to bring you now. A US woman disguised in a niqab whose gun jammed during a failed assassination plot in Birmingham has been jailed for 30 years. Amy Betrow flew to the UK before she tried to shoot Sikander Ali at point-blank range outside of his home in Measham Grove in Yardley in Birmingham shortly after 8 p.m. on the 7th September in 2019. More on this breaking story as we get it. In other news today, the GCSE pass rate has fallen again, with 67.4% of all grades in England, Wales and Northern Ireland at 4C and above, according to national data. The gender gap for top grades is persisting. Nearly a quarter of girls achieved at least a grade 7A compared to almost a fifth of boys, a 5.1 percentage point gap. Tens of thousands of students can also find out their grades today via an app for the first time. The government's trialling this app ahead of a national rollout. Government borrowing in the UK slowed to a lower than expected £1.1 billion in July, according to official figures. The Office for National Statistics said the figure, which was a £2.3 billion less than the same month a year earlier, is the lowest July borrowing figure for 3 years. It came after a rise in self-assessed income tax payments helped increase tax receipts for the month. July borrowing was higher than the £2 billion figure predicted by a consensus of economists. Borrowing for the first 4 months of the financial year stood at £60 billion, £6.7 billion more than during the same period last year. Campaigners have issued a fresh call to ban smacking across the UK after a poll found more young adults think it's unacceptable. All corporal punishment for children, including shaking, slapping and hitting, became illegal in Wales in 2022. Scotland brought in a similar ban in 2020. However, in England and Northern Ireland, it's unlawful to hit your child except where it's reasonable punishment, something that's judged on a case-by-case basis. Health experts have urged Parliament to bring in a smacking ban across the UK, with doctors and psychiatrists saying research shows the detrimental effects of physical punishment. The Ministry of Defence has admitted there have been 49 separate data breaches in the past 4 years at the unit handling relocation applications from Afghans seeking safety in the UK. 4 out of the 49 breaches were already publicly known, including the leak in 2022 of a spreadsheet containing details of almost 19,000 people fleeing the Taliban. The data breach that led to thousands of Afghans being secretly relocated to the UK was only revealed last month after the High Court lifted a gagging order. The MOD has refused to provide any details of the nature of each breach, but incidents which have previously been made public include officials inadvertently revealing the email addresses or other personal details of applicants to third parties. And a British woman believed to be the world's oldest living person has turned 116. Ethel Caterham, who lives in a care home in Surrey and is Britain's oldest ever person, took the world title in May following the death of a nun from Brazil. She was born in 1909, 5 years before the start of the First World War. In a statement, Ethel's family said she's spending her birthday quietly with her family so she can enjoy it at her own pace. And those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3468 and €1.1557. The price of gold, £2,479.43 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 9,278 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GBNews Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates.
Now, Lucy Connelly, the woman jailed for inciting racial hatred against asylum seekers on the day of the Southport murders, she's now been released from prison.
Yes, the 42-year-old walked free from Peterborough Prison this morning after serving part of a 31-month sentence.
Now, Connelly was jailed last October after she posted on X that hotels housing asylum seekers should be set on fire for all I care. Now, she later clarified that those remarks, she said that they were threatening and abusive when she pleaded guilty. And we're joined in the studio by our Home and Security editor, Mark White. As we can see, Lucy Connelly leaving the prison earlier this morning in a white Skoda taxi.
Yeah, and that sight will be a cause for celebration, there's no doubt, amongst many who feel that the sentence that was handed down to her was just too harsh for a crime that she admitted was a rush of blood that was out of character and that she very quickly deleted days before the police ever came near her house. But I think what this case does show, what it does highlight perhaps, is how badly advised Lucy Connelly was in pleading guilty in the first place, because you'll often get lawyers who tell their clients that, look, you know, if you do plead guilty, you will get a third of your sentence, as is if you plead guilty at the earliest opportunity. So that can be quite attractive if you are clearly someone who's going to admit your offence. Then pleading guilty at that earliest opportunity is going to be advantageous in terms of the time that you'll spend behind bars. But the backdrop was the disorder that was spreading around the country, and judges being empowered basically to go to the very limits of their sentencing guidelines to ensure that maximum sentences were handed down. So for many, they saw it as actually quite a perverse sentence to be handed down for someone posting a tweet, however ill-advised and inflammatory that particular post might have been. But that was where we were, and that was the judges. And on another day, when we weren't in the midst of riots across the country, I'm sure the sentence would have been significantly less, if not a suspended sentence. But that's where we were. And compare and contrast that to Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor, who decided to go to trial on this, pleading not guilty, and convinced a jury of his peers that it was, again, a rush of blood to the head, that he didn't mean to make the slit across the throat sign,
for example.
All of the above. Yes. Everything that you can argue before a jury, that they can see the person behind the crime, that they can take all of that into account. And, of course, in Ricky Jones's case, they found him not guilty. Lucy Connelly might have had the same outcome had she gone before a jury.
Mark White, Home and Security Editor, thank you very much. Well, also more breaking news in the last hour, because the Home Secretary has said that Labour is restoring order to Britain's borders, despite this morning's latest figures showing that asylum claims are at record levels.
So more than 11,000 people applied for asylum in the UK in the last year, the highest number since record began.
Well, it's 111,000. The figures show that the number of migrants living in hotels is up 8% in the year, taking that number to over 32,000.
Well, reacting to the figures, Nigel Farage has hit out at the government, saying Labour has lost control. Well, joining us in the studio is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates. Rob, these are extraordinary figures.
Absolutely, and I think what they really do show is our asylum system has been far too lenient and far too willing to accept the claims of individuals coming here illegally for far too long. And the result, as we have seen with today's figures, is that the number of applications has effectively doubled since the small boats crisis started. Of course, it's not just those that are coming across illegally. We're also seeing a spate of individuals that have nominally come into the country to study or to work, who are also then finding themselves destitute and suddenly unable to return to their home country and therefore claiming asylum as well. So this is a system that's now costing the British taxpayer £6 billion a year. Housing individuals that have come across in small boats will be setting us back £15 billion by the end of the decade. This is something that's clearly out of control, and we need to have a real conversation about whether the asylum system needs to be temporarily, at the very least, frozen for the foreseeable future, because I think many people around the country would think we've done enough. We've taken in people from Afghanistan, we've taken in people from Ukraine. We can't really do much more. We are at breaking point.
I think people will be familiar with the spectre of people coming across on small boats. We know that those figures are at record high. But what you're saying is that that's actually a relatively small proportion, only around a third of the total number of people who are claiming asylum each year. So how are people managing to switch from legitimate visas into asylum seekers?
Well, that comes to the problem with our legal immigration system, which is far too generous, lets in people to work on very low wage, very low skilled jobs who frankly aren't able to support themselves. And many do actually come to this country with the intent of making an asylum claim. They come here knowing that once they make that asylum claim, they're able to pretty much stay indefinitely whilst their process is going through this arduous, sometimes year-long process. It doesn't really require them to actually then have to stay in the job that they initially came to or stay at the university that they initially came to. This is something that our asylum system has effectively been hijacked by these immigration tribunals that are far too willing to lend a generous ear to people making up spurious reasons as to why they can't return back to their country of origin. Some instances of people having ran into trouble in their own country for getting involved in gang-related crime and therefore not able to be returned because they might face persecution there. Well, I'm sorry, that's not our problem. This isn't an individual that we should be having to support in this instance.
Well, Rob, amid this surge in asylum claims, the overall number of asylum seekers in accommodation hasn't changed much from March to June. And ministers will see that potentially as evidence that their strategy is having an effect in terms of processing claims faster. Are you concerned that the processing of claims is just a rubber stamping of approval and moving them along rather than actually properly investigating the surge that we're dealing with in 50,000 since they came to power last year?
That's exactly right. Our asylum processing system is woefully inadequate. The Home Office's own data shows that about 50% of those applications that are processed are actually done to an unsatisfactory level. They're done effectively, as Charlie said, rubber stamping, really, because there's time restraints, there's resourcing restraints as well, that really, constraints which really mean that this isn't something that is being done with a judicious eye. And of course, those few that are actually rejected by the Home Office then have rights of appeal and, as I was just saying, then get to go through a really elongated process where they can have a sympathetic judge lending them a generous ear. So we also need to take into consideration the number of small boats migrants that have crossed since 2018 that have actually been removed from the country is woefully low. I think it's less than 10% of people that have come across on small boats, this data shows, have actually been removed from the country. And that is because even those that do have their application rejected, we are incredibly inadequately processing and removing from the country as well. And of course then there's also the consideration of 17,000 people who just simply disappeared from the asylum system in recent years. So the whole thing is creaking at the seams. But let's not also forget amongst this data is that we saw legally 750,000 people came into the country last year on long-term visas. Only roughly a quarter of them came on work visas. So there is still a huge problem as well on the legal migration front. And although the illegal migration front is obviously a huge injustice that many are sick of seeing, I think we also need to recognise that the huge changes that many people have been very unsatisfied with for decades now continues as well.
Well, Rob Bates from the Centre for Migration Control, thank you very much. I think it's important to point out that the government would claim that deportations are actually up over the last year, although those numbers are very small still compared to the number of people arriving on small boats.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's go to Middlesbrough now because it's been highlighted as one of the hardest hit towns by mass migration, with almost 6,800 international arrivals last year alone. And GBNews reporter Anna Riley joins us now live in Middlesbrough. Anna, what sort of concerns have you been hearing up in the northeast?
Good morning. Yes, well, we know that the town of Middlesbrough has got a population of around 150,000, but immigrants make up around 3 to 4% of that. And Middlesbrough and the surrounding areas like we are now, we're in Thornaby, near Stockton as well. These areas are where we see higher immigration because there's cheaper house prices here to house people, and also for people coming over to study internationally as well. It's near to Teesside University and also to Durham University. At the moment, as I say, we're in Thornaby. We're in the last post memorial bar here, and you may be able to see behind us it's filled with memorabilia that bereaved families of the fallen have brought in. It's almost a museum. It's a place for veterans to come together to share their stories, and it's a community hub. I'm joined now by Julie Cooper. She's the owner. Julie, how have you seen the area change over the years, and how much do you attribute that to immigration?
I think that they've taken over the area, in this area at least. There's more people that are immigrants than what there is British at the moment in this little piece where I live. And I think it's just, we should stop the boats, I think, because that's our problem over in England at the moment. They're coming over. There's too many of them. We're an island and we're full. And it's having a knock-on effect on everything, from the NHS to the schooling. Everything that's going on in England at the minute doesn't look good.
And you yourself, you lived in Italy. Yeah. You came back here. Just tell us about what you do here.
Well, I run this bar. I opened as an Italian restaurant, to be fair, 12 years ago. And I ended up with a memorial bar, changed. I had to change it because there was nobody coming into the restaurant. There wasn't the footfall anymore in Stockton. Now, when I left, it was a booming town, and that's why I did return. But I'm quite saddened by what I see at the moment. There's too many. There's too many in our area at the moment, and I think it's like that all over England. The hotels as well. I mean, we've got people on the street still, and they're getting priority housing, and they're held in hotels, which I think is totally wrong. because people who are running businesses are also paying the taxes to keep these people in the country in comfort when we can't even look after our own.
And how do you feel that Britain is now as a whole? Because you're tempted to go back to Italy, aren't you?
Yeah, I am very tempted to go back to Italy, and I probably will one day because I've got no intentions of staying here. I will say one thing, I'm glad that my grandkids are not in England at the moment because I wouldn't want them to grow up in this environment. It's no longer safe, you know, people are intimidated when they walk down the street. Old people don't go out anymore at night time because they're frightened. And I see things happening in this area what I'm not happy about, you know. And for them, I mean, they've got a different culture to us. For them, it's okay to smoke joints and sit on a memorial bench outside my pub, when for me, it's not, you know. Things like that, they're just getting more and more disrespectful and more disruptive as well. They're getting more aggressive. I mean, I watch all the videos and I see all the news and everything, and I really don't like what's happening. We do need to get our country back. We need to make ourselves better before we help others. And I'm not saying stop people who genuinely need help coming into the country, but I am saying stop these young kids coming in, these young men coming in of fighting age, you know, and that's what they are. Where's the women and children, you know?
Thank you so much for speaking to us this morning, Julie. We'll be here throughout the day. We'll be speaking to veterans next this afternoon just to get their take on these immigration levels and how it's impacted the community here.
Well, thank you very much. One of us has to do this.
Thank you, Anna Riley. Thank you so much for that report. And coming up on the programme, we'll be looking at a drive to cover British towns and cities in national flags being coordinated by an online movement called Operation Raise the Colours, because we're asking the question, is this what Britain needs, restoring civic pride?
You're watching Britain's Newsroom, Britain's favourite morning show on GB News.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, it's 11:25. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Charlie Peters and Miriam Cates, and we're joined in the studio now by our paper review panel. It's the broadcaster and journalist Carol Malone and the political commentator Jonathan Liss. And before we go through what's in the papers, we're taking something that we've seen online, actually, because you both would have seen this trend of people putting up England and Union Jack flags. Well, there was more of it again last night, and it's now looking increasingly organised. Look at that footage on your screen there. That's more England flags than you see in an away end at the Euros or the World Cup. I mean, Jonathan, what do you make of these recent efforts to put up these flags across town centres?
Look, I have no problem at all with national identity and celebrating national identity with the Union flag or the England flag. I do understand that there's an issue about public safety, about the place that you can do it, about where you can hoist any flags. I think the council say that lampposts are not safe for various reasons. Well, look, that's what councils...
Are you seriously joking?
That's what councils are saying in some cases.
They're saying that if
I'm not health and safety expert, Carol.
Well, hang on. They said that if a flag falls on someone's head, it could be dangerous.
Look, I think that
Who said that? Which council said that?
It was one of the Birmingham councils.
Look, I think that
if it falls on
Carol, in fairness, if someone puts a flag up somewhere and it has a very heavy pole attached to it and it falls on someone's head, well, if it did, then that could actually injure somebody. So, you know, it's not a ludicrous argument, but I do think that in general, I don't have a problem with people waving a flag, obviously.
Carol? No, I think people should be out in the streets and waving them all the time. There's nothing to be ashamed of with the British flag. I'm getting sick of a society that makes us feel racist or jingoistic or nationalistic because we raise the flag. It's patriotic to like the flag. And patriotism is about pride in your country. And I'm sick of this nation being made to feel it should be so ashamed of our colonial past that we cannot
It's not about colonial past.
Yes, it is.
And it's also, it's kind of funny that you say it's not jingoistic to do it. When it's obviously flying a flag on every street corner is kind of the definition of jingoistic.
Did you think it was jingoistic for them to be flying the Palestine flag in Tower Hamlets, for example?
That's not jingoism, that's a protest, that's a political protest. That is
it's still a national flag, though.
Well, I wish it was a national flag. If we recognise the state of Palestine, it will be a national flag, hooray. So, look, in terms of flying the flags, I think what you say about patriotism, Carol, I think that one of the things about British patriotism is it's always been very understated. We've never gone the American way of flying a flag from every sort of garden or house, so singing the national anthem first thing in the morning at school, which has never been the British way. So we're actually going down a way that is quite un-British, ironically enough. Do you think?
Well, let's move on to another story, because it is, of course, GCSE results day today. And there's a story in The Telegraph about Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, warning that 4/5 of children from white working-class backgrounds were falling short in English and maths. Carol, this is an increasing problem that we're seeing, that poor children from white backgrounds are massively underachieving in the state
tell us something we don't know. People have been banging on about this for years. It's incredible that Bridget Phillipson has just noticed it. It's not just about maths and English, it's about white kids generally. You know, in our universities, more than half of universities in England have fewer than 5% of white working-class students. In the top-class universities, it's less than 2%, which is astonishing. And that's because, you know, white kids are constantly being told white is bad. They're constantly being pushed aside in the name of DEI, in terms of multiculturalism. And private schools are being closed down. I think white kids have had a rough ride in this country for quite a long time.
But it doesn't really have anything to do with skin colour. If you really break it down, it's to do with things like family structure. And in some poor post-industrial parts of the north, for example, the vast majority of kids are growing up without dads, for example. We know that has a big impact on academic achievement.
Look, as with any of these categorisations, you can't just look at them in isolation. You always have like an intersectional. You need an intersectional approach in these things. You know, when the reason that we say it's a white working class is because a lot of working class people are not white, and there might be sort of different attainments within those groups. So I think that you do need a holistic approach to find out why boys in particular underachieve, about sort of the culture that you have as a boy growing up, that it's not cool to work and study, etc. And how we can sort of change sort of youth
much
culture.
More than that. It's the native population in this country is continuously belittled by the elite.
Carol.
White people are meant to feel they're not important.
That's
in this.
not true.
Well, you carry on, Jonathan. You know.
No, carry on. I just
Yeah, but I think if you dig down into the data, for example, children from ethnic minority backgrounds, there's not so much of a difference between children on free school meals and children from more privileged backgrounds, whereas there's this huge divide between poor white children and wealthy white children. A lot of that is in areas where actually there isn't much diversity, and they're growing up in schools that are predominantly white. So I think it's a lot more complex.
They've been taught in a system that is telling them that being white is bad. That's what's happening. It doesn't matter whether the class is a mixture of ethnic minority kids and white kids. Kids are being taught that being white is
Carol,
bad.
where's your evidence for saying that? Where's your evidence for that? Look, when do you ever hear that being white is bad? I've never heard that in my life.
Jonathan, there are schemes for internships in publicly funded organisations that offer them specifically to ethnic minority children. And I think, that is part of a wider campaign, I think, that looks at issues purely on racial lines, but not necessarily on class lines. And I think a lot of white working class kids will look at that and think, well, maybe I don't matter. And I think wait, Carol, I'll try and finish this sentence. A lot of people will be looking at that and thinking, maybe my charity doesn't need to bother so much about that. We should just be focusing on promoting ethnic minority kids. That's got to be a problem, surely.
Well, I think that, as we just said, you need a holistic approach. So clearly, people from ethnic minorities have been disadvantaged and oppressed in the past, and so it's completely fine to have approaches that try to rectify the balance. It doesn't mean, it's not a zero-sum game that means it's bad to be white. It's just saying that is an article, a way in which people have been disadvantaged, and that you can approach.
You're creating new discrimination to make up for old discrimination.
No, that's not what it is. It's saying that you can address a previous disadvantage. It doesn't mean that white people don't suffer disadvantages in other ways, particularly if they're poor or if they're sort of underachieving boys or whatever.
We can clearly see the disadvantages existing already in white working class kids. I think all of these opportunities should be open regardless of race. Do you not agree with that?
I think that there are certain disadvantages based on class, certain disadvantages based on gender and ethnicity, and that you can deal with all of those things, but you need a holistic approach as well. But I just don't believe that people are being told that being white is bad.
But that also does not answer the question why poor white boys are starting school aged 4 already behind. I think there's much more going on here. Anyway, thank you very much to our panel, and don't go anywhere because we've got a 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Good morning. The top stories at 11:30. Lucy Connelly, who was jailed for stirring up racial hatred against asylum seekers online on the day of the Southport murders, has been released from prison today. Kemi Badenoch has called for more Conservative councils to launch legal challenges over asylum hotels as the government faces a potential revolt from its own local authorities. Students have received their GCSE results, with the gender gap for top grades persisting. Nearly a quarter of girls achieved at least a grade 7 or A, compared to almost a fifth of boys. Comes as 70.5% of girls were awarded at least a grade 4 or C, compared to 64.3% of boys. Campaigners have issued a fresh call to ban smacking across the UK after a poll found more young adults think it's unacceptable. And Amy Betro, a US woman disguised in a niqab whose gun jammed during a failed assassination plot in Birmingham, has been jailed for 30 years. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me at midday.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Tatiana. Well, up at noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. I can guess that you two are going to be starting with the Lucy Connelly stuff, yeah?
Well, before we dive into all of that, can we just say today is Emily's last day before maternity leave.
He looks happy about it.
He's hiding the tears.
It is actually, yes, and we've got a little surprise at the end of the show, so you're going to want to keep
I hope that's
watching.
not you're going to give birth.
Well, hopefully not.
Live on GB.
I am 38 weeks pregnant today, so that is technically full term, so who knows? Who knows, eh? Hopefully not. I don't want that much drama, although perhaps some of our bosses might like the drama, I don't know.
Well, handily, there is a hospital just over the road.
You'd be a wonderful midwife. You'd be so excellent.
My grandmother was a midwife, actually, so I
the lineage is there.
The lineage is there. I think it's something you just sort of are genetically able to do rather than you're trained for. Right?
Yeah. Save the NHS some money and you can do it.
And when you come back, you have the perfect promo for the last time you worked together. Beautiful footage.
So yes, we're dragging Patrick into the studio a little later too for our little surprise. But we've got a lot else, of course. Huge numbers when it comes to asylum claims as well.
Yes. And
today.
I'm just reading in the Telegraph, you two, about they've got a list of people who received jail terms less than Lucy Connelly.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a man here, a lab technician convicted of terror offences. We've got rapists, a doctor found with child abuse images, domestic abusers, some of the worst crimes that you can get convicted of. Violent crimes, crimes that put people at risk and require the protection of the state. Connelly getting 31 months. Most of these people getting suspended sentences, no jail at all.
It's completely ridiculous. To me, the concept of prison, a lot of people think it's about punishment. I think that's almost a secondary issue here. For me, the role of prison is to keep society safe from dangerous people. The people that might go out and attack, stab, rape, all that sort of stuff, temperamentally violent people, of which, sadly, there are many in our society, you put them in a prison to keep society safe from them. Who was being helped by Lucy Connelly being locked away in prison? Did people think that she was going to do another tweet? What's the logic here behind actually locking her up rather than any other form of punishment? There's a lot of logic from locking up murderers and rapists and abusers and all the rest of it. That's a very logical thing to do. What were we actually trying to gain from locking up Lucy Connelly?
Absolutely, good point. And we're also going to have a writer on today who's arguing that if Reeves has to tax the rich or the poor, she should tax the poor.
Is this Charles Amos by any chance?
It could be.
The one and only.
It could be.
Wow.
The one and only. So we'll have to find out why on earth he said that.
Well, I will be tuned in to Good Afternoon Britain with that.
I did have a very memorable interview with him. Anyway, thank you both, and we're looking forward to your surprise. That's coming up at midday.
Well, there is elsewhere a Labour revolt brewing as town hall leaders across Britain are poised to fight the government's migrant hotels policy. Now, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp demanded more is done to tackle this earlier on the channel.
Took in government pretty decisive action. We halved the number of hotels in our last 9 months. Our last full year in office, 2023, we got the boat numbers down by 30%.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Lots of dry weather to come for many of us as we go through the end of the week and into the long bank holiday weekend. At the moment, there's quite a slack flow across us. There's an area of high pressure just to the south of Iceland. But whilst that's bringing a lot of dry weather, it is also allowing for a bit of a northerly breeze to push through. So that's going to keep things a little bit fresher along those North Sea coastal parts, a bit breezy towards eastern parts as well. Elsewhere, a dry story though, and we are going to see some sunshine breaking through. The best of the sunshine towards the southwest and also across parts of northern Scotland. In the sunshine, it's going to feel pleasantly warm, temperatures in the low 20s, but like I say, towards those eastern coastal parts, feeling a bit fresher, especially with that breeze. Now, as we go through into this evening, for many it's going to stay dry and fine, particularly across much of Scotland. Some decent sunshine to end the day here as well. Meanwhile, across the southern parts of Scotland, the borders area, the cloud could be thick enough at times through today and into this evening for a few spots of rain. Similar across parts of Northern Ireland, some parts of Northern England. Elsewhere, though, across the rest of England and Wales, yes, there could be some cloud lingering, and if you're under the cloud, it's always going to feel that bit cooler, but on the whole, it's going to stay dry and at times quite bright. Overnight, it's a case of chasing the cloud, because where we see the cloud lingering, it will keep temperatures from dropping too much. But where we see the cloud disappearing and clearing away, we're going to see our temperatures dropping. So whilst most towns and cities will just about hold up in double figures, in rural spots we could see temperatures dropping to around 2 to 5 Celsius. So a bit of a chilly start tomorrow morning. There could be some fog patches first thing, but these will quite quickly clear. And then again, for many, it's a largely dry day. Not totally dry, perhaps a bit more cloud, a few outbreaks of rain towards some parts of northwest Scotland, maybe the odd spot of rain where the cloud's thick enough across England and Wales as well, but most places staying dry and most places a little bit warmer than today as well. Bye-bye.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. It's 20 to 12. You're watching on GB News with Charlie and Miriam.
Now, councils across England are reportedly lining up legal challenges to stop asylum seekers from being housed in hotels.
Well, this follows a High Court victory for Epping Forest Council, which granted a temporary injunction against migrants being housed in hotels.
Now, Kemi Badenoch has since urged Tory councils to follow suit, but there have also been similar demands for Labour councils, although the government has said that Kemi Badenoch's call-out is hypocritical nonsense because, of course, she says that's the party that created the asylum hotel system.
Well, political commentator Kai Wilshaw joins us to discuss this. Kai, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a huge potential headache for the Labour government, isn't it? If this sparks a trend, if the judgment sparks a trend, Yvette Cooper could find herself in great difficulty working out how to house these asylum seekers.
Well, exactly right. And actually, it puts things into stark contrast with some of the hidden good news in the figures that have come out. It should be a good news story for the for Labour. You know, the returns of failed asylum seekers, cutting costs, which is obviously something that people really care about. But that headline figure of the number of asylum seekers in hotels and the reaction to it has been pretty damning. So Yvette Cooper won't be having a good morning for sure.
Well, Kai, I mean, you say Yvette Cooper will be having a good morning. She is potentially being challenged by members of her own party. We're hearing from the leaders of Wirral and Tamworth Council, those Labour councils. They're potentially launching legal action against the asylum hotels in their areas. There have been protests there for a while. They were a bit of a hotspot also during last year's disorder. Do you think that more Labour councils could follow suit? And does this represent a split in opinion between the government and the Parliamentary Labour Party and then those regional Labour members and activists around the country?
Well, let me first say I don't think that's the right approach, because what more court cases will do is set up this us and them mentality that I think is really unhelpful when you're trying to deal with such a difficult problem. However, we're going to see Labour councils take that action, aren't we? Because I think you see this from some Labour MPs as well. Over the summer, there's been rising discontent and a belief that the government isn't actually responding to attacks from the right, from Kemi Badenoch and the Tories, but principally from Reform on this issue. So I'm not surprised that you're seeing that discontent, but with such a large party and with unruly members, especially councillors, it's really no surprise.
But it isn't just attacks from the right, is it, Kai? I mean, polling now shows consistently that immigration is the biggest issue for the majority of voters, above concerns about the economy and the NHS, which typically top those polls. This is now mainstream public concern on the left and the right, and yet the public are looking at the small boats crisis, for example, more and more people coming over here. The government at some point is going to have to take some decisive action to end this problem of more and more people coming over.
Well, I agree that it's not a right-wing issue. I agree that people are rightly concerned. But the thing is, the government is taking action. And that's what is the real failure of this morning, is that there are good news stories that are being ignored. But reducing the backlog of immigration claims, down 18%. Almost every figure, every key statistic in this announcement is down, except for that big headline figure. Now, they're trying to really deal with what's been a horrible inheritance from the Conservatives. Obviously, it's compared to the 56,000 people that were previously housed under Robert Jenrick when he was Immigration Minister. It's a huge reduction, and we're going to continue to see that. You talk to some reform figures, and privately they say that Labour will likely solve both this crisis and the small boats crisis. It will take time. So these attacks from Kevin Badenoch really fall flat, I think. The Labour government is dealing with this crisis, and that, if you dig into the figures, is quite clear.
Kai, no minister wants to answer this question. The question is, where will they all go? If you close down the asylum hotels, if you get rid of the HMO dispersal locations, which a lot of people are more concerned about, putting these unvetted, mostly young men, into the heart of communities, what do you think should happen then? Where do you think those arriving on small boats illegally into England on the shores, where should they go?
Well, this is why the Kevin Badenoch attack is so cynical, because she knows that the government is looking at, for instance, RAF sites that are a bit more remote, looking at disused government buildings that could be used to house immigrants. But that is taking time. And what this means is, what these attacks on hotels mean is a huge reduction in the state's capacity at speed. And the whole reason these hotels were set up was that there needed to be a temporary solution. By the way, it was meant to be a temporary solution back in 2020.
Yeah. It's been a long temporary solution, hasn't it?
I know, exactly. And what we're going to see now, though, through this push to close down hotels, is quite an unhelpful rush or a scramble to find anywhere to put these migrants, rather than which locations would be the optimal places to put them. And that's why these attacks are so cynical from especially the Conservative Party, who know this issue inside and out and failed to deal with it under their watch.
Kai, isn't one of the problems, though, it's very difficult to build sort of specialist accommodation for this due to human rights law, the ECHR, for example. And during COVID, we know that the state can build buildings very quickly, setting up these NHS Nightingale hospitals as quick as a flash, using the Royal Engineers to support them in doing that. Why can't the military make a new set of tented accommodation sites to house asylum seekers? Would you support that being done if all the legal business could be squared away?
No, I wouldn't, because as I say, if anything you do at real speed in reaction to something, rather than having thought it through and it being your stated policy from the outset, that is going to cause concerns. That is going to cause problems. I mean, if we set up tented accommodation, God knows what you unleash on those areas where that happens. I think the fact that they've already been looking into different types of accommodation is the right approach. But I fear that now what we're going to see under fire from all sorts of sides, that they're going to go for that quick option, which actually won't help the crisis at hand.
Well, Kai Wilshaw, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And I think that is a good point, Charlie. The problem is, under the law, you can't detain people unless you've got a reasonable chance of removing them quickly. And at the moment, there is no chance of doing that at all. Yeah, no, it's a real mess of a situation to be in. Well, after the break, we've got some breaking news. There's been a sentencing at Sheffield Crown Court from some Rotherham abuse. But before we get to that and some more discussion about those exam results as well, let's get your European weather forecast.
You're looking happy. Well, the forecast looks good. So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hot and sunny conditions continue across much of Spain and Portugal. A few heavy showers likely in Croatia. A fairly brisk wind blowing in Sardinia. Quite breezy too in southern parts of Portugal. But most of Spain and Portugal dry, fine and sunny. Just a small chance of a shower in Ibiza. Much greater chance of seeing some heavy showers across Croatia. Fine and sunny for most of the Greek islands and Turkey. That will continue through the weekend as well. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, just like week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. We've got a quick bit of breaking news for you now, because a man who groomed and then repeatedly raped a schoolgirl 20 years ago has just been jailed at Sheffield Crown Court for 15 years for 5 sexual offences. Now, the Operation Stovewood team from the National Crime Agency investigated 63-year-old Paul Richardson from Rotherham, who abused the 15-year-old at hotels in South Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire after grooming her. That sentence being handed down after the NCA investigation, Operation Stovewood, into non-recent abuse in the South Yorkshire town.
Well, moving on now, and thousands of students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are opening their GCSE results this morning, and we can reveal that female students have outperformed male students on average this year. But let's take a listen to some of these perhaps nervous pupils.
I'm really happy with my results. I got 8 9s and 2 8s in my results. I was really stressed this morning. I was like walking up and down the house, not knowing what to do, but when I seen these amazing results, I'm really happy and feel really relieved.
I'm happy, yeah, very happy. And is that better than you were hoping for? I know you said about that 9 in RE. Yeah, I don't know how I did that. I think that's the one I revised the least for. But yeah, I'm really happy about that. And are you pleased now about all the hard work you must have put in, all that revision to get brilliant results like that? I'm happy I've got it and it's out the way. I know there's one result in particular that you're very, very happy about. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my history grade, I got a 9. I got the highest mark in the year group.
So yeah, I'm really, really pleased with that.
And what does that mean for your future?
Well, I want to be a history teacher, so I'm going off to Cronton to do sociology, philosophy and history, so quite looking forward to that.
Well, thank you, Sophie, and hopefully everybody out there is pleased with their results. Well, it's nearly time to say goodbye, but it has been a packed show, and I think so much is going to come out of this Lucy Connelly story. Hopefully some legal reform, because it is a bit of a dog's dinner.
Yeah, it's time to have that serious debate about free speech in the UK. I think the time is ripe for people to argue that they should have First Amendment rights like they do in the United States.
Good proposal. Well, coming up next, we've got Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily, and we'll see you soon.
A little bit of a different show from us today, not least because, Emily, it's your last day.
It is my last day, and I feel it's a bit bittersweet, actually. Obviously, they're excited because I'm having a baby.
Yeah.
But very sad. I'm going to really miss all our viewers and listeners and you.
Yeah. Our
the team.
laughs, our debates.
And everyone else. Our little
But there
fights.
is a gangbusters show to come, so do stay with us from 12 till 3.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. For most of us, it will be another dry day today. A mixture of sun and clouds, with some grey skies and some blue skies. The wind's generally light, still a bit of a breeze blowing along some of these North Sea coasts, keeping things a little fresh. It is a bit cooler out there this morning compared to recent mornings. For many, though, we are starting off with some sunshine. We will see cloud developing as we go through the day. So, as I say, it's not going to be blue skies all the way. Temperatures, though, when the sun is out, getting into the low 20s across the south coast of England, South Wales, 21, 22, maybe 23 Celsius. It does, again, feel a bit cooler on some of those North Sea coasts, even though it should generally be a bright day with, at times, some sunshine coming through. But we will see some cloud coming out across the Midlands, parts of East Anglia and the south east. Decent spells of sunshine continuing for much of the day in South Wales and South West England. Again, that mixture of cloud and sun further north, just a very small chance that the cloud may be thick enough for the odd light shower. The breeze continuing to ease down across the east of Scotland. Still noticeable and cool feel across Shetland with that breeze coming in from the north here. It'll be chilly overnight tonight. The cloud will tend to melt away through this evening, so generally becoming clear and with light winds. Might just turn a bit misty in one or two places, and we will certainly feel the chill first thing tomorrow morning. Compared to recent mornings, temperatures in towns and cities just about staying in double digits, but many rural spots will be below that, down into single figures. So a fresher start to Friday. Again, generally a fine day, maybe some thicker cloud in the Western Isles, producing the odd spot of rain. Again, it's not going to be blue skies all day everywhere. There will be times of fair, but a cloud coming in and blotting out that sunshine. But again, the vast majority will have another dry day, and temperatures a little higher, and they'll pick up a little further as we go through the weekend again, with most of us likely to stay dry.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show